everyone. I don't know about you guys, but this is a long-awaited video for me because I have literally been watching FatFabFeminist's TikTok to see when she's going to unlock the rest of her content again because I have really, really wanted to do this video. You guys don't tend to be take things too far or are particularly rude to anyone I cover in the comments, but for posterity's sake, I am going to just put this little keep in mind advisory note before we head into this. This particular video, we're covering 7 TikToks, and this particular video is going to contain stuff that is sensitive to FatFabFeminist, and I believe is very personal thing that she opened up about that I think is worth looking at because I feel like it gives some perspective to her mind and the previous videos that I've made on her. And I think it really kind of sheds some light into her perspective. But because it also, in order to get that perspective, you kind of have to listen to some things that are very personal to her. I'm going to ask that everyone come at this with compassion in the comments. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to criticize the thought process, doesn't mean you're not allowed to criticize what she says. I'm just asking you to lead with compassion and take into consideration her experiences as we kind of move through this. We're gonna start with some videos that kind of she's gonna say some things that it's like, oh, you're exaggerating and stuff, and then we're gonna get some some insight in a few of the later TikToks that I'm covering in this video. So I just one kind of want to say try to curry the initial impulse to post a comment until we've kind of heard more of what she has to say. Of course, if you are one to comment as you watch the video, that's cool too. Um just keep that in mind as we go forward. So we're actually starting with this one and then we're going to end up here.
People are constantly told that once we lose weight, we will finally be happy. But the thing is, unless we do the work to learn to love ourselves at whatever size our body is, losing weight isn't going to fix all your problems overnight. Sure,
so that thing about, fat people are constantly told as soon as they lose weight, they'll be happy. I think that that's more like a media narrative than what anyone's actually saying. It's one of those things that is like in the cultural zeitgeist. But anyone that's tried to lose weight and anyone that's legitimately talking to you about like lifestyle changes to lose weight, they're not gonna claim that it's going to fix all of your problems. Anyone that's been through it is going to say that no, it doesn't fix all your problems because it doesn't. It simply doesn't. The purpose of losing weight does have quality of life changes. It makes it easier to move. It You can withstand levels of like sudden activity. Like if you have to suddenly run or something, if your body is already conditioned to that state, you can do that a lot easier and you can recover a lot easier. And just like general health benefits of lower blood pressure, reduced chance of diabetes, reduced chance of heart disease because you're exercising and because you're eating right and you're eating the right foods and you're getting enough nutrients, which is also going to help general energy. It also, in my experience, helps sleep. Like keeping up your general activity and eating healthy does provide quality of life benefits, but it does not fix everything in your life. And I think that the majority of people that are in like fitness spheres that aren't like the gym bros, they're not the influencers, they're just real people trying to make better choices. I think most people are going to say, no, it's not going to fix all of your problems. It's just going to have a quality of life difference. That being said, I understand how if your primary exposure to this has been or this like talking through the weight loss and weight loss being a topic of conversation, if a lot of that is through like especially teen movies from the 90s and the early aughts, that was kind of the general message of them, so I understand where that came from for her, but in the real world I don't really think it's like that much.
help. But if you don't do the internal work, just becoming smaller is not going to fix all your problems. But that is a lie that we're constantly being told. And it's really sad to see people who are continuously told that lie find out after they've done all that work that is not actually true. Weight loss will not fix your problems if you have not healed yourself.
So I think there's a little over focus on healing herself and self-love and all of that to a certain extent. My personal philosophy is a better way to love yourself is to start behaving in a way that you want to be, that you want to perceive yourself. So if you want to perceive yourself as a kind person, make conscious efforts to act with kindness in mind. If you want to be perceived as a smart person, make efforts to teach yourself things, whatever it is. It can be anything of interest to you, but make conscious efforts to learn something a little every day or every couple of days. Make it like at least a weekly routine. So, and I think that's where self love can come from, because when you're working for your future self the way you want your future self to be, it's easier to love yourself in the present, because you know that while you are imperfect and while you will always be imperfect, you can change. And I think that keeping in mind, at least for me, I'm not going to say, because a lot of their thing is loving yourself as you are, loving yourself right now. That just doesn't work for me. If that works for some of you, that's great. I'm happy for you. That doesn't work for me. For me, what is conducive to self-love is that I am not trapped in whatever I am unhappy with about myself in that moment. I can always change. And that is where it's easier to have compassion for myself now, because I'm still in the process of getting to where I want to be. So it's kind of like when you're showing someone the ropes and they're like brand new, or you're teaching a kid something. You kind of view yourself the same way. It's like, well, of course I'm not going to get it perfect. Of course I'm not going to be right exactly how I want to be, because I'm not there yet. I'm still learning. That's my perspective. Um and so in that regard, I think that people pursuing weight loss because that's what they personally want for themselves. It has to be something you personally want. It can't be something that you are doing for the hope of validation from someone else. Because in my experience, if you are waiting for validation from others, you will almost always be disappointed, because people in general don't really care enough about whatever's outside themselves. So, finding that love for yourself, whether that be as you are or through your potential, is possible. And sometimes that comes with the process of making efforts to lose weight. Not necessarily the weight loss itself, but the fact that you are making consistent efforts. I don't know what my dog is freaking out about.
Living as a fat person means being told your entire life that everything will be okay once you lose weight. You are living for that magical moment that you are finally thin to get the life that you want, because we are told that that is the one barrier that keeps us from living the life and the experience that we want. We are told our fat body is the only thing standing in our way of happiness, and once we lose weight.
So, unfortunately, the video glitched out for a moment, but I do want to just follow up with that. Where is she getting this? Being thin is the single barrier in your way from getting everything that you want. But who told her that being thin was the single barrier? Like, is the single barrier, because the only time I've ever seen that narrative is in teen movies where like the fat girl gets a makeover and loses weight. That's like the only time I've seen that type of rhetoric. So my genuine question to her is, where have you heard this? Who has said this to you? How have you inferred this message from whatever? Because what I've seen is that people are like if you're complaining about not being able to find clothes in your size, well, lose weight. Yes, losing weight will make it uh more accessible for you to find different types of clothes, because you'll have a larger variety, because you'll be within the general norm. Being able to fit in airplane seats more comfortably or booths in a restaurant, yes, that is true, because you'll be within the norm as the way society and general structures are designed. But that's not necessarily everything in your life, you know? I'm curious what she's referring to as the single barrier. Like, what is she taking into consideration when she's saying that? And where did she get that idea and where did she hear that?
Once we listen to them and we become smaller, then everything will be okay. The problem is that's not true. And time again, we see fat people do the work. They lose the weight, they're finally thin, and they're still not at the place where they want to be. They're still not happy in the way that they want because losing weight is not going to fix any of the internal conflict that you have. If you want to be content and happy in yourself, weight loss is not going to be a solution. It could definitely help, but it's not going to matter unless you do the internal work and deal with your issues with your body and yourself internally. I spent years hating myself, hating my life, hating everything about myself. And then I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't hate myself just because I'm fat. And because I did the work, now I am comfortable at any stage that my body exists in, whether that be thin, fat, anywhere in between. Because I have done the work and I have combated the part inside of me that equates my body size to my worth. I
So
know
it's interesting
that
because we actually have slightly different interpretations of this doing the internal work. For me, it's like, okay, fine, you're comfortable with any size that your body is. That's great, but you are still very upset by the opinions of others about your body. To me, part of that internal work is the ability to let go of that need for validation or recognition from others that you are fine as you are. Because the truth is that you're not ever going to get that, not universally. There's someone that's always going to have a problem with you. There's someone that's always going to hate you. You will always be a villain in someone's story. You just will. It is impossible to live this life with all the people that you meet throughout your time here on earth. Someone is going to hate you and someone is going to blame you for their misfortune. And honestly, you probably won't even know about it unless they happen upon you and they blow up on you. And that's like, I don't understand what I did. You probably didn't do much other than live your life, but someone is going to view you as the villain in their story. And there's some people that are going to be pissed off because they don't think you deserve what you have, or they think you're ungrateful for what you have. Like, those are all things. Those are all things that can exist simultaneously. And the truth is that that can all happen and you haven't done anything wrong. You can be the villain in someone else's story without having done anything wrong because it's all about perspective and it's all about everyone's different personal moral code, which no matter if you find people that, oh, hey, no, we think very similarly, there's still going to be differences in how you view morality. I worked with someone that we got along very well and we agreed on a lot of things. She thought that anyone doing pot, like she was totally fine with alcohol, but she viewed anyone as doing pot as adjacent to a criminal element and essentially kind of like a loser and a deadbeat. And she equates people that she ran into because her favorite restaurant was in the same parking lot as a pot shop, and anyone that showed aggressiveness while driving or had an argument with anyone, she was convinced they came from the pot shop. Like, that's just. And I once mentioned that I went to a pot shop to get my grandmother's CBD. I never said that I bought anything from there, and I actually kind of made a point to say I don't buy things from there. Just because I kind of knew how she felt. But even me going into that pot shop was enough for her to change her attitude towards me for like a month because I dared walk into such an establishment. I don't take it personally. I didn't take it personally then because I understand that that's just her way of thinking. I view it differently. I don't see in general I have a view of as long as someone isn't harming someone else and anyone that is involved is a consenting adult that has not been coerced in any way, then what they do is not my business. Morality, immorality doesn't really matter because people have the ability to do what they want with their lives. But not everyone's going to think that way.
being thin is not going to fix my problem. And the thing that sucks is like fat people are continuously pushed on this idea that like all we have to do to be happy is to lose weight, and then they do it, they lose the weight, and they're still not happy, and it's just so difficult to watch. They did what they were told to do, and they had no one to tell them, hey, that's not going to fix your problem. You got to learn to like yourself just how you are,
So the thing
because
about
when you
learning to like yourself just how you are, I agree with that. But I have an issue with the you should love yourself just as you are. You don't have to change, like that whole narrative I have a slight issue with personally. Because I believe that people should always be changing and should always be improving. That's my personal belief. But if you're looking for a single thing to fix your entire life, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And my question is, those that people that aren't happy, why aren't they happy? What about this situation has made them unhappy? Are they unhappy about their loose skin? Are they unhappy that they didn't like get this amount of attention that they thought they were going to get from losing weight? Did they build up a fantasy in their head while they were doing this? We talk about being happy, but happiness is forever fleeting. I don't believe in pursuing like 100% happiness because I think that's always going to be out of reach personally. You can be content, but to expect to be happy all the time is just unrealistic in my personal perspective. But when we're talking about, well, they did this and they're not happy because they didn't do the internal work. Well, what about it though made them unhappy? Because it may not be an internal work. It may be, well, I guess it still would be internal work, but it might be an adjustment of expectations that needs to happen. Because oftentimes and this is one thing that I've seen across the board, kids, teens, adults, it doesn't matter. People's expectations of the results and what they will get at the end of whatever they're pursuing are often much higher and almost fantasy realm to what is can be realistically expected. And I say this not to be a jerk and not to shit on anyone's goals or pursuit, but whatever you think is going to happen from attaining the goal, bring down your expectations.
truly like yourself, it doesn't matter what size you are. Again, do what you want with your body. But I promise you, losing weight is not going to change anything unless you've healed yourself. You deserve love and kindness at whatever size your body is at, and I am truly sorry if anyone has ever made you feel otherwise.
So, on that note, I will say I agree that people deserve love and compassion no matter what their body size.
Living as a fat person means being told your entire life.
I agree with that.
The thing that y'all are not understanding is that being a fat person is legitimately traumatizing. Not like internet, oh, this is traumatizing. Traumatizing as in, I this year was diagnosed with CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, as a result of growing up as a fat person and the trauma that comes with that. There is legitimate trauma that comes with growing up as a child and believing that your entire value is tied into your body.
So,
That
I want to like input here. I agree with her. I think that growing up as a fat child can lead to some trauma. And we're actually going to see a bit of that trauma in another upcoming TikTok. But I will say, I don't think that anyone has a problem with acknowledging that there can be trauma from growing up as a fat child. I would be surprised if there's anyone that's like, no, that's absolutely impossible. That's bullshit. No way, no how, whatever. I don't think that that's something that most people would fight against. The issue is from something else that FatFabFeminist has said, which is that growing up as a fat person is the most traumatic thing that can happen to a person. That's where we kind of have the issues. Because I don't want to shit on someone's hardship. Your hardship is your hardship. Your journey is your journey. And what you dealt with is what you dealt with. And how that affected you is how that affected you. And that can result in trauma. That can result in PTSD depending on how it affected you and what you had to go through. I am not going to fight that. I would just say that claiming that anything is the most traumatic over anything else is not taking into consideration how much worse things could potentially be.
no one will love you because you're fat, and that you will not have any love, any success, any friends because you are fat. Society literally treats fat people as if we are worthless. Like I don't know how y'all think that that shit is not gonna fuck people up. Like it does. It messes with your head. It's crazy because the amount of hate that I receive for being a fat person, like if you guys saw like the shit people said to me on the internet, you would be flabbergasted. Like this is not just like a quirky, oh, like it's really hard being fat. No, it's like in your developmental stages, you are.
Okay, she's going back into childhood here for a moment, but I do want to just touch on you have not seen how much hate I get for being fat on the internet. Let's be clear. This is one thing I am going to put forth. I'm not going to deny that she gets some hate strictly because she's fat. I'm sure she does. But people like me, people in the anti-FA community, do not, and we don't really hate you. We hate your arguments. That is a distinction I wish a lot more fat acceptance people would make. We cannot feel any particular way about you, but we can absolutely despise your opinions. That's that's something else. Anyway, a lot of people though have the biggest issue with your opinions, with your statements, like what you've said before about how growing up fat is the like worst thing that can happen to a person. That seems so dismissive of so many incredibly worse childhoods that people could have to necessarily worry about food. Meaning that your parents cared whether you ate or not. And like I could go on. So you have said things and you often say kind of extreme opinions. And people are going to have, some people especially, are going to have a visceral hatred for that. And yes, I'm not going to deny that you've been attacked. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've been verbally attacked online. But it's not entirely because you're fat. You put some really out there opinions too. You can't absolve the criticism and the the negative attention that you get through, oh, they just hate me because I'm fat. You have a part to play in it. And I'm not trying to victim blame here because I'm not saying that you deserve everything, and I don't think that you deserve anything that threatens your safety or threatens your life or threatens anything in your personal life. There are plenty of people that take it entirely too far, and I want to be clear, I am not condoning a single action like that. I'm not condoning a single action that threatens you or tells you to harm yourself in any way or that does anything that is strictly meant to inflict harm instead of critique your opinion. And I'm sure she does get comments that are meant to harm her, psychologically harm her. I'm sure she does, and I'm sure she gets threats of potential physical harm. I'm sure she does because she has very strong opinions and she is not modest about them, and that can be a backlash, and I don't think that she deserves it, and I think that people should learn to have differing fucking opinions on the internet. So I want to be clear, like I understand that, but to say that it's strictly because you're fat is not correct and is kind of misrepresenting your entire TikTok account.
Constantly thinking about your body and like feeling absolutely worthless to the point where like you feel dehumanized. I don't know, that shit it messes you up, and like I'm dealing with it, like I'm fine, and it's not like, I think that experience is very different for everybody else, and I think obviously this definitely varies person to person, but like I don't think that y'all like can fully grasp the legitimate like trauma that comes with being a fat person in the world. Like I don't think that y'all fully get it. Nobody is meant to deal with that like level of consistent criticism and hatred. It's not like, ooh, like woe is me, my life is so hard, like sob story. It's just like I'm not saying this like to ask for sympathy by any means. I'm just saying this because like I just genuinely don't think people understand the mental toll that it takes. And it's really funny because if you're gonna say I care about fat people's health, like the only reason I'm commenting on their body is because I care about their health, but like that's not true. You don't. You're virtue signaling and you're using this idea of health to give you a reason to be cruel to fat people. That's literally what. If you actually cared about fat people's health, like mental health is also a factor in that. And a lot of the time, let's say a fat person can't take care of themselves, I promise you, if their mental health isn't good, they're not gonna be healthy. They're not.
So I'm not gonna argue whether someone actually cares about fat people's health or not. I'm not gonna argue that because the truth is that I don't particularly care. For me, I don't particularly because she's an adult, she can do what she wants. My issue is the rhetoric that she preaches. And this, well, part of the health is mental health. I agree, but part of what can help mental health is physical health. There is this kind of body mind connection to a degree that because your mind is not separated from your body. Your mental health is not separated from your physical health. Just as mental health can bad mental health can manifest as physical symptoms. An unhealthy body can manifest itself. I want to say mental issues, but that has its own connotation that I don't particularly mean in this circumstances. But it can manifest as mental symptoms. We'll put it that way. Like my anxiety has been massively aided by exercising regularly. I don't get anxious the same way. I still struggle some with stress with my new job, but it is aided massively by exercising regularly and not taking in too much caffeine. So healthy habits it won't cure depression and it won't cure massive anxiety issues, but it can help with alleviation of the symptoms to at least a degree. So, yes, mental health is important, but that should not come at the neglect of physical health because they work in tandem. As your mental health gets better, you may have fewer aches and pains because sometimes you can have physiological manifestations of mental hardship. So I just want to put that out there.
They're not gonna lose weight. They're not gonna do any things that you want them to do. So I don't know. Definitely not the best person to talk about this topic because I'm still figuring out what that means for myself and I still don't really fully understand how it impacts my life, but it's more than hurt feeling. The way people are treated matters. It impacts them. It impacts the way they live their life. It impacts their relationship with the world. A lifetime of persistent and constant cruelty is going to have an impact on a person, and you cannot claim to care about people if you are someone.
So the constant cruelty bit, I'm not going to judge her on her personal life. I don't know what she's dealt with. On the internet, the any cruelty that you experience, again, I don't condone death threats or threats of physical harm or anything like that, but some of the backlash that you get, the negativity that you experience is because you have such staunch takes and also that you don't really practice what you preach. That's another thing is that we've seen Victoria kind of shit on certain people because of something they're going through. You say you don't care about the physical health, mental health is also important, then you should also care about other people's mental health. There's there's a TikTok a little further ahead. I'm not going to show it in this video, but it's a Stitch with this guy saying how much he hates himself because he's fat and he actually looks relatively thin. It could be an attention grab, but it could also be a matter of body dysmorphia or what have you. And she was entirely unsympathetic. Just as you have mental health struggles, so do other people. I think a big thing that the fat acceptance and people in general would benefit from is that our struggles are not unique to us. They are, but they aren't. They're unique in how we experience them, but the general frustration with your job, with life, with expenses, with the difficulty in maintaining a healthy life, with the difficulty and generally feeling run down and sad and anxious. Those are all semi universal experiences at one point or another. Even if you have depression, there are many, many people that have depression, and that's not to disregard your experience. I'm just saying you are not alone in that experience, and that experiencing that does not give you permission to shit on other people because you don't see the struggles that they're going through. That's kind of what it is. I have looked at some of my old videos. I choose to leave them up because I think that this whole channel has kind of been almost like an arc for me on how I respond to people I disagree with. And I think I was less kind in the beginning. And I'm not saying that I'm particularly kind now, but I think I'm more considerate with my words. And I think that I try less to be judgmental and more try to provide a full scope of the picture and why I disagree. Feel free to comment if you disagree with that, if you think I am far more judgmental than I was before, or if I'm not, or if I'm the same amount, or what have you. I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like I agree that people should not throw visceral hatred your way. I agree with that. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it does anything for the overall conversation. But your hands aren't clean at this.
This is one of my least favorite responses when I say how bad.
So what she's responding to is a comment that says, I genuinely want to know what y'all think the internet consists of. It's not a nice place. Stay off it if your feelings get easily hurt. Now, this was a kind of brash and abrasive way to phrase this. If I could rephrase it, I would say the internet is full of people with varying opinions and varying levels of compassion and empathy. And to expect them to be kind to you is necessarily unreasonable, but it's unreasonable to expect that many people to conform to your idea of what is kind, compassionate, or empathetic. If you're sensitive to this, it would be better for you to not engage as much with social media.
Believe how people are treated on the internet. I get a response like, well, what did you expect? It was the internet. That's your fault. Like, you're the one putting it out there. Like, and it's just like, I hate that rhetoric because it's like, is it not your choice to be a bad person? Like, it's not your choice.
And this is another issue that I have with the Fat Acceptance and Victoria personally is this: it's your choice to be a bad person. In their mind, they're not a bad person, just as in your mind you're not a bad person, even though you have openly shit on women that are mid-size or smaller. You have openly shit on someone that was concerned about gaining weight because that didn't align with your idea of how someone would behave. There was no reason for you to shit on those people, but you did it anyway because that is part of our discourse within humanity is that we tend to, if we have something to say, we will say it. And there are varying levels of tact that are used in our disagreements. So, this idea that people choose to be bad people and people choose to be cruel by your definition in regards to yourself, in which in general we have higher expectations of how people behave toward us than how we behave towards others. That is a general human thing. It takes substantial effort to recognize when you are behaving just as those that you don't like. You behave similarly, whether you realize it or not, whether you want to acknowledge that or not. You simply feel you are justified because the people are thinner. So you can't, and in general with humans we're very wired into what's fair. And so for you to expect a level of kindness and empathy that you are not showing to others, people are going to say fuck you in general.
To be cruel, you act as if people are inherently bad, and I just don't think that's the case. Can we not hope for better? Can I not hope that people will decide to be kinder and better, and hope that human beings are capable of change and like capable of actually becoming kinder and more empathetic and like treating people well? Like, yes, as internet people are mean. I'm very aware of that. Like, that doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and change that. Just because people are mean doesn't mean I should not hope that they decide to be nice.
So the issue with it though is that you can hope, but you're placing entirely too much weight on other people's opinion again, number one. And number two, you can hope that people will be better, but better by your definition, not by theirs. That's another thing. Is that there's given that it's internet and it's global, our interpretations of what is nice and what is empathetic and what is kind is very culturally dependent and on the semi like it's not really acultural. It has a unique blend of cultures that is skews western, but there is a difference. There are many cultures mixing, and someone else's idea of kindness is not going to be your idea of kindness, and there has to be a level of tolerance for that.
And like when I post on the internet, I'm not consenting to be harassed or like bullied essentially by other grown adults.
So you say you're not consenting, but the truth is that this is very much like a public forum. It is like coming into the town square, essentially. The internet is our virtual third place where the entire space is, with the very few exceptions, is open, especially in social media. It's open. So what you view as harassment, other people view as criticism. What you view as bullying, people view as discussion. By coming into the town square, you really have to kind of put on some emotional armor in which you are handling these people. And if it's too much for you and you can't generate an armor that can withstand the barrage of opinions, it's not, the truth is that you can't control all these people. You can't demand they behave in a way that you want. Your consent online to other people's opinions is kind of irrelevant. The only way that you can change that is by privating your account and controlling who can see your stuff. That's how you can protect yourself. But otherwise, given that your page is public, you have to be willing to withstand a barrage of other opinions. Again, not condoning any threats of physical violence. Just want to be clear.
I'm putting my content out there for like my followers. Especially don't consent when people take my videos and put it to a different platform that I have no control over. That's normalized, yeah. Doesn't make it right. I'm of the belief that people are able to.
So I really don't understand. This is not, because that was like very much what I'm doing right now. That you hate that people like me take your content, respond to it, and post on a platform that you have no control over. But why do you need control over what's essentially a dialogue discussion? That's just not how the world works. You put your opinions out there, people can respond to them. And people that, like myself especially, that aren't cutting your, we don't cut up your clips. I post full amounts and I respond as I watch to provide full context. Now, I do think that there is something wrong with someone that takes your argument and cuts it up to make points that you did not actually make, to cut out clarifying points that you made within your video. I don't believe in that. I think that that is absolute bullshit, and I think that is essentially making a straw man argument and villainizing someone who doesn't deserve it. This isn't villainizing. This isn't shitting on you. This is providing a difference of opinion. And this is the way, this is modern discourse. This is how modern discourse happens. You have to be willing, if you're going to put it publicly, you have to be willing to either ignore people like me who respond, or to deal with a difference of opinion.
Choose whether or not they're good and kind people. And just because that's just how it is, doesn't mean we should stop working to make the internet a better, kinder place. It would be better for everyone if we weren't as cruel and weren't as quick to judge.
But that's just it. This goes to show just a difference in culture right here. You view me recording your stuff and responding to it as an act of cruelty and harassment and harm. And I view it as a place of discussion. You are more than welcome to take portions of my argument in response to one of your TikToks or something and respond to that as well. You are completely welcome to do so. That is, I put this out on a public platform. By all means. The YouTube Shorts has a clip option, and I know you have a YouTube channel, so by all means, clip away. All I ask is that you try to provide full context the way I do, or link to the video so people can get full context. And try not to misrepresent my argument, just as I try very much not to misrepresent yours. A lot of people in the fact evidence community say I purposely misrepresent. I can't purposefully misrepresent whole clips that I show. I'm showing TikToks in their entirety. If there's multiple parts to it, I try to show every part. And I do this to give full representation of your points. I can't misrepresent something that you said that I did not cut up in a single bit.
Tired of this like pessimistic worldview where everyone just like sucks. Literally, just be nice to people. This is one of my least favorite responses.
This is something that I feel like she's very young in a very naive way. We can still hope for a better internet. You don't have to be mean to people. We can still try to make a better internet. That's very optimistic viewing. Honey, everyone's allowed on the internet, and a lot of people use it as a place to get out their frustrations by attacking others. Like, there's even research behind this. It's something that people do. And the thing is, and this isn't part of anything that I've read, it's just my observation, is that anger breeds anger. So if these people that are getting their anger out from their personal lives on the internet on random strangers, those random strangers then are irritated and have that anger, and that fuels more almost destructive discourse where there's talking that can happen, but it's fueled by anger and it's fueled by frustration until eventually everyone's kind of fighting or it fizzles out, one of the two. But again, your idea of being kind isn't everyone's idea of being kind, and there are some people that really don't give a shit. Once you get out and you meet more people, most people are incredibly self-centered. They want what they want when they want it, and they don't give a shit who they upset in getting it. They don't care. They care about their lives and no one else's, just as we all to an extent do. Some people just care about it more than others. Some people are willing to steal and demean and whatever they have to get whatever they need, whether that a sense of superiority or money or recognition or what have you. It's just the unfortunate way that people are. Some people. But unfortunately, their behavior can infect others, in my opinion.
This is funny because I've been to fat camp twice.
So this is the one where I feel like we're going to get a lot of perspective. So I ask, responding to this one in particular, that everyone come at this with compassion.
In my life, the first time I was 8 years old, turning 9, I had my 9th birthday at fat camp, and instead of cake, like any normal 9-year-old, I had a watermelon with a lemon on top in the shape of a pig, and like a bunch of like nut and honey balls instead of cookies. That was it. That was my 9th birthday. I was 9 years old. I was in the mountains of Bulgaria, and we were surviving off of basically a diet of fruits and tea, and that was it for maybe 3 weeks. I don't remember much of it the first time, but the second time I did it, I was 16 years old, and I did it for about, like, I don't know, 3 weeks, and I lost, I don't know, 15 kilograms, something like that. So yeah, in that 3 weeks or so that I starved myself, I definitely lost weight, right? The second that I re-entered society and I like was a person again, all that weight came back because like it's not sustainable. Like, the problem with dieting is not that it's like you're not going to lose weight. Sure, you can lose weight. The problem is most people will gain back what they lose and then some. That's the problem with yo-yo dieting, because like whatever weight you start at, the likelihood is that you're going to gain all the weight that you lost and then more. So you're going to end up at a higher weight than you started off with. That's the problem with yo-yo dieting.
So I really want to let that play in its entirety before I responded. So, first things first, I really feel like this gives us an insight into Victoria's perspective of what dieting is. Starving yourself, eating nothing but tea and fruit, and then coming back to a regular diet, especially as a not 8 to 9 and then a 16-year-old, of course you're gonna binge eat after that. Like, I'm not saying that she did, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did, because if you spend 6 weeks eating nothing but fruit and drinking tea, and then you are provided this plethora of food again, yeah, yeah, that would not be sustainable in the slightest, because you can't really survive off fruit and tea, not as like an everyday living an average life sort of person. And that was the issue. The issue isn't dieting, it is that diet, which is basically a starvation diet, and it's unhealthy. Like, yes, they're eating fruit, but there's no protein in fruit. They're surviving off fiber, sugar, and water essentially. They were surviving off of. And I think that that also explains a level of trauma she talks about growing up fat. Because if I was sent to a Bulgarian fat camp. Uh, and that's what I had to do. I would be traumatized too. That is was entirely inappropriate because it did nothing to teach her about healthy eating. It did nothing to teach her about moderation. It did nothing to teach her about small calorie deficits that would eventually result in weight loss, but in a gradual pace that would be maintainable. And I agree with her that dieting doesn't work because dieting would be short term. Lifestyle changes where you change your diet, not dieting, but change your diet in a permanent way would is what is sustainable. But dieting, going on these extreme diets only to stop and then go back to your other way of eating. The other way of eating was what got you to that weight in the first place. And then now, because you've deprived yourself for so long, yes, you might even overeat and gain more weight. That is expected. What we're talking about when anyone who's reasonable talks about weight loss, they're talking about small incremental changes that lead to an overall lifestyle change that is sustainable for you. That's what they're talking about. Now, to talk about her actual experience, she presented um the watermelon, the lemon, and the fruit nut balls for her birthday as like the source of clearly like she even her voice started to shake and stuff when she talked about that. That is clearly a point of trauma for her, and I understand it. I just think that her attribution of the trauma is misplaced in my opinion. I did not live her life, but I've watched this clip a few times because I'm like, oh, this explains so much. This explains so much. I don't think that it was the watermelon instead of a cake and the fruit and nut balls versus cookies. Like, I'm sure that was a bit jarring and I'm sure that was hard for a 9-year-old to experience, especially if she's used to cake and cookies for her birthday. 100%, I can see how that would be hard for a 9-year-old. Cookies for your birthday is not necessarily universal, and not every child gets it. But I think something that's very telling is the lemon in the shape of a pig. Even on her birthday, and she's getting these kind of healthy snacks as a treat for her birthday, is overshadowed by them also making sure that she knows that by participating in this, she is fat, and she came here as a fat pig because it's the lemon in the shape of a pig that kind of sets the whole tone. So, while it's her birthday, she doesn't get what she normally eats for her birthday, and then at the same time, she's kind of being shamed for it. I would see how that would leave a very lasting impression and would be very traumatizing. But I don't think that it was the food itself. I think it was the overall emotion of the experience. Because it's not like they were. If they give her the watermelon and the fruit nut balls with a lemon in the shape of a pig, it's like that's also putting her down for even indulging in that much for her birthday. That's how I read that situation. But that was something that I thought would really help kind of give some insight into Victoria's perspective. Because if that is her idea of weight loss and that is her experience with dieting, I could see how she attributes all dieting with trauma. I can see that. I can understand that. And then she had to go back and do it again at 16. She had to starve herself again at 16. And then when she comes back, 16-year-olds, one, they're still growing. Um, and two, their appetites tend to be larger at that age. So of course she's gonna come back and eat more. That's to be expected. Unfortunately, she talks about how she's healed, but I don't think she really has. Not in the way that will actually repair her relationship with food. But I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that because I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But I just wanted to put that out there, put this out there because I feel it really gave me insight and more compassion towards Victoria, and I hope it does for you too. And I just thought it was something that was worth noting, something that was worth knowing about her. So we have one more, and then we're done.
I know that this was a totally innocent comment and there's literally nothing against the commenter. However, I don't like it when we talk about issues with like romantic love and the automatic response is, oh, you have to love yourself. Like self-love is not going to replace romantic love. It's not going to replace the desire for that and the feelings that come with it. So I would just like, I don't know. I think a lot of people are struggling with dating and romance and having a crush. Like I think it's a very normal thing to do, and I don't think that you have to just like learn to love yourself because I do love myself. That doesn't help with me being insane when I have a crush. I know this was a total.
So this was something really small that I just wanted to know because it's not really related to anything else. But because this is related to, you should be attracted to fat people. And I don't know if I don't remember for sure if this was related to that conversation, but I don't know, there's been a lot of discussion around that. And I just want to add on to it with this video. But loving yourself is kind of, it's more than just loving yourself. It's comfortable being alone, comfortable being in your own company. And I'm not going to say that erases that desire for romantic love. I'm sure it doesn't. But you have to try to get to a place, even if you have that desire, to also be content on your own. Both can exist. You can be content on your own and still desire a romantic relationship. But the thing is that desiring that romantic relationship doesn't necessarily consume your thoughts, and it doesn't feel like a point of injustice because you're alone. Being comfortable alone while also desiring a romantic relationship, in my mind, and granted, I am asexual and have never had dating experience, so take this with a grain of salt. But in my mind, being comfortable alone while desiring a romantic relationship would allow you to at least evaluate the potential for romantic relationships with a bit more, with like a step back, so you're not swept up in it. You're not swept up in the crush. You're not swept up in the feelings. You know. And while self love doesn't fix that, you can't control other people's romantic attraction to you. So by controlling the feelings and how you react to maybe a rejection or that desire for romantic love will help with the regulation of those crushes, in my mind, if I'm thinking about it on its own. But I just want to tack that one on at the end just because I thought it was an interesting perspective, and I'd like to hear your guys' opinions on this one as well. So this has ended up being a far larger video than I wanted, but I'm actually really glad that I still had the chance to make this and talk through this. So now I get to talk a little bit about what I'm reading. And I don't think there's anything like really different. I Became the Villain's Mother came back this week, and we're getting a lot of cute after stories with it. Oh, I had read where is it? The Villainess's Revenge is Sweeter Than Honey. So when I was reading this, I was really swept up, and then it just kind of ended. Like everything worked out almost exactly as it was supposed to. There weren't really any twists. It was a very straightforward story, and I was actually kind of disappointed with it when it initially happened. Um, because it's like, oh well, I mean, like things happened as they were supposed to. The story was told, but it didn't feel much like a ride. It felt more like a walk. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't particularly great either. But then in the side stories, we get like the bonus happy ending, which was sweet and everything. But what I actually thought was really interesting was this 4-chapter side story that took us back all the way to the beginning of the story and showed us how, after she had been killed in the original timeline, how it worked out for her bastard of an ex-husband. That was interesting. That was it. He definitely got his comeuppance, and it was absolutely delicious because it was very much framed in a way that he would not have died the way he did if he hadn't killed his wife. And it's even revealed that he killed her not because of anything that she did wrong, but because he was intimidated by her intelligence. That was interesting. That made it a bit more worth reading. I don't know if I would recommend someone spend the money on a 107 chapter story. That's kind of on you. If you like political game sort of manhwa, it's not bad, but I thought that was really interesting. What else have I read? Savage Forest is going okay. turning the Mad Dog into a genteel lord is looking really interesting because it looks like maybe there's people working against the priestess trying to reform this, what was essentially a human weapon, into a member of high society, but it's almost like they didn't want that to happen. It's like they were looking possibly for an excuse to kill him, I think. Like none of this is explicitly said outright. It's just interesting and it's like hinted at, and that's my interpretation of their hints. What else? This I was so disappointed. I remember this where it's like, oh hey, this updated. Oh, I gotta see that. It was just an author's note saying we'll be going on hiatus for a while to read more of this. But that was some it didn't update for months. And then it's like, oh look, we have this. I'm like, oh my god, yay, an update. And I look and it's the author's note. It's a creator's note. I was I felt betrayed by that. Everything else is just in from Tappy Tunes at least is kind of flowing along as it will. Yeah, I think there's nothing much else to say for this one. Actually there is. Sorry, Divorcing My Tyrant Ex-Husband is really interesting as it's moving along. The art for season 2 definitely got a lot better. But the one thing I will say as I'm reading it, the turnaround from where the end of season 1 is to where season 2 kind of puts us after, especially after a few chapters in, it kind of feels like that whole, because at the end of chapter 1 she essentially escapes and goes into hiding, but she spends all of like a month in hiding before she just comes back, and things like, don't get me wrong, I like that her tyrant husband is trying to win her favor to a degree and is showing her more respect and all that, and that's great. But I'm like, she didn't, her going into hiding didn't really serve much of a purpose. Not really. So I haven't actually read The Price of a Bride. That it's on my to read list. I just realized that all these women have pink hair. Um, it it's on my list of stuff to read, but it's not really a priority at the moment. The Fantasy of a Stepmother is moving along. I still haven't caught up to where I left off in the physical book form, so there's nothing really new for me. It's just kind of a recap for me, and that's the same with The Perks of Being an S-Class Heroine. Uh, I really enjoy even rereading though the S-Class Heroine. I really like it. I'm reminded again of why I liked it so much because like she decides that for her combat power she wants to be a healer, which means she has to have divine power. So it's like a cleric role. And part of that is she has to pray for 1,000 days straight between the time for 2 hours between 5 and 7. And so she goes to do that, and then she actually gets these like little almost game window pop-ups that represent the different gods of it, and then she essentially finds a new religion. She like founds a new religion for the god of this particular world, and it gets really interesting from there, and I completely forgot about that portion of it. It's entertaining and I really like it. There's nothing new from the other. I haven't read the new chapter of One Husband Is Enough yet, but and the Remarried Empress hasn't updated yet because I'm doing this on a Saturday. But I started a new series called Behind Her Highness's Smile, and it's about this woman that, like, so there's this house of no like top tier noblemen that are known for being like well serving of the empire, but the current emperor doesn't like them, right? And so as the reward, because they're the ones that won this most recent like war between nations, they were like the big ones that secured the win. He offers the head of house's son, the emperor's sister, as a bride, and because it's coming from the emperor and because it is the princess, they can't reject it. That would be too much disrespect, so they can't reject her. But then she's brought out, and it's heavily implied. Well, one, she can't even speak it with words or sentences or anything. Everything is either screaming or grunting or random noises. So she can't communicate. She is very unsteady on her feet and wears nothing but this like shift all day every day. That's all she wears. It's the only clothes that she's given. and she's prone to semi-violent outbursts at the same time. Uh, but it's unclear whether this is entirely her or if it's also partially an act, because there's a hint that it might be at least partially an act. But it's also heavily hinted at that she was um like brutally abused by her brother, the current emperor, and like she still has like issues surrounding that as well. It's a very interesting. The maids that came with her from the palace are definitely acting as spies inside. I think it's a duke, the like duke's household. The duke is currently revealed to be cheating on his wife, and his wife is like, I don't even want to fucking deal with it. I don't want to know any more about it. I stopped loving him a while ago. But the Duchess is also showing favor for her because the princess looks like the Duchess's daughter who died in childhood. So there's this whole thing that's going on where like everyone is slowly getting quite a bit of affection for her, with the exception of the Duke himself because he's kind of an asshole. But at the same time, there's something that is clearly happening behind the scenes that they know is happening, but they don't exactly know what it is. So that's what I'm reading right now. Let me know what you're reading right now, and I want to give a big thank you to my Kator again for a bunch of recommendations that she gave 2 videos ago. Um, I'm gonna start reading them soon. And while I could complain about my job, I'm very much in a space right now where I'm like, I can't tell if people are being difficult and unreasonable or if I just don't know how to navigate the situation yet because I'm such a new teacher. So I'm in the sit back, feel things out, and document just to protect myself, but then going from there. So that's it for me. Let me know how things are going in your lives right now. And what are you reading? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so, so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.